everyone. Welcome to Mission to Inspire. My name is Shola, and we have our wonderful guest here with us today. His name is Scott Allan. Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for joining us today. And we're going to be discussing a very, very interesting topic. I personally thought to myself, it should be the other way around, but we'll hear from the horse's mouth why he thinks it is so. And the topic is, doing the hard things first, why we should do the hard things first before we get to the easy things. So we'll leave that to Scott to talk us through that. But before we go into today's topic, I would leave it to Scott to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about him.
Sure thing. Yes, my name is Scott Allan. I am an author, entrepreneur, and content creator. And I've written 35 to maybe 40 books, and they're published in several languages. So, depending where you're living, you might be able to pick one up at your local bookstore. And yes, today we'll be discussing Do the Hard Things First. Looking forward to that discussion.
Mhm.
I do live in Japan, as I probably mentioned just before we started here, and I've been here for about 25 years.
Right.
So how I got here was maybe an interesting story,
Mhm.
but one of the things that brought me here was because I wanted to do one of the hard things, which has actually changed my life at the time. So
Right.
I thought, what a better way to do that than to get on an airplane and fly to another part of the world.
Exactly.
So that's where I ended up. Yeah. And yeah, I also do coaching. I work with a lot of authors, help them to publish their books and market their books after that. So that keeps me very busy.
Okay, great. Good to know. Good to know. Thank you for coming on our show once again. But before we go into today's topic, I'm going to ask you five things about you.
Hmm.
So, do you like early mornings or late night writing sessions? Because I know you're an author anyway.
Mm. Wouldn't say I like getting up early, but I think that it really depends on who you talk to. But
Mm.
I'm hmm, I wake up early, so I usually get up between 5 and 6 a.m.
Okay.
Uh, I will do writing in the morning.
Okay.
And to be honest, that's probably when I'm at my creative peak, would be between 6 and we'll say noontime, right? So it depends on the time of day. Now, I'm also a bit of a night owl, and that's actually more of my nature is to stay up later.
Mhm.
So I have these two sides. One side, like I have to get up early in the morning because I do start working pretty early, whether it's coaching or working on some projects. And
Yeah.
then on the other hand, I like staying up late. So that's when I get actually start to get more active is after 9 p.m. But that doesn't always work out very well if you want to wake up early. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I often stay up too late, don't get enough sleep, and of course that impacts your,
Always, of course.
creativity. But to answer your question though, I mean, I do writing probably just throughout the day. I would say like three times I'll have like writing blocks for 1 hour.
Right.
Um, Ideally, though, the best writing does come when I work on it in the morning. So, what I'll usually do if I don't have anything else is I'll block in 2 hours of content creation time for usually between 10 and 12 p.m.
Mhm.
And during that time, my goal is to write 2,000 words. And if you stay consistent with that as a habit,
Mhm.
you end up with a full book at the end of the month usually. So yeah, all
Two
those
thousand
little
words.
pockets of
Two
time. Yeah.
hours. 2 hours in a day. Wow.
Yeah, in a day, probably 2 to 3,000 words per day is what I can usually get. Not all of my writing times are like 2 hours. I'll have one that's 2 hours. The other ones might be reading over content that I'd written the day before or the night or that in that morning. And the other content hour maybe for social media or other like my newsletter, those kinds of things. So it's not always for a book, but I'm usually putting something together during that time. So
At that time. And it's all organic.
Yes, it is organic. Yeah. I mean, I do use the Chat GPT and some other AI tools for building structure and just generating ideas. But I don't know. I was writing long before those tools came around. So I know a lot of people are probably using it for other things, but it's a tool. I think it's a great tool. It doesn't write the books for me, unfortunately. Still have to do that. So for the most part, yes, it is certainly organic. Yeah.
Okay, great. Good to know. Okay, so do you like to write collaborating with others or solitude by yourself?
Mm. I put pretty much everything that I create is in solitude. Now, having said that, yeah, when it comes to collaborating with other authors, I've never co-authored a book with anyone, but I've
Oh,
had other authors who have written forewords for some of the books, right? So that's kind of a collaboration. But when it comes to co-authoring, yeah, just I don't know. I think I prefer to write the book solitary. I mean, I do have a small team that I've hired and they work with me, but I mean, I come up with the initial, concepts for the books. And then, yeah, I'm the one who actually writes most of the content.
mhm,
And if I need some ideas for putting like the cover design together. So I have cover designers. And so that's actually more where the collaboration comes in would be not the writing part of it, but what happens after that when it comes to the editing, actually. So, collaborating with my editor, collaborating with my cover designers, with the formatters and everybody else who basically is in book production and puts everything together after that. So
okay, right. Okay. So do you write fiction books or non-fiction books?
I write, well, right now, everything that I published is nonfiction, self-help personal development books. However, by nature, I'm probably more of a fiction author, although I haven't written fiction in a long time.
Mhm.
I did start out writing fiction. So I think eventually I will go back to it because I still have a lot of unfinished projects when it comes to fiction. And fiction is certainly very challenging. I mean, so is writing a nonfiction, whichever kind of book you're writing. Well, I think writing in general is challenging. So, yeah, it doesn't matter maybe, but what kind of book it is. But um, I certainly, yeah, I'm a big fan of like a lot of like, I think I've got hundreds of fiction books. And when I was, I think training for being a writer, I would go through dozens of books, like fiction and nonfiction. And that's just the practice that I do. It's just to get better at the craft, really. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, talking about creativity, what fuels you to be very creative? Is it tea or coffee?
well, it's probably neither one, although I do or did drink a lot of coffee. I've really kind of moved away from it a little bit. I think the best thing for firing up the brain really is water. Because what I find is that if I'm drinking too much coffee, and I don't really drink tea that much sometimes at night, but that has caffeine in it too. So,
Yeah.
but I probably drink or had drank at one time too much coffee and didn't make me more creative or imaginative. I mean, yeah, sure, caffeine, has certain effects where it can wake you up maybe, but it can also have think there's a can have a negative, the negative side effects of that, or it can actually make you rather jittery and a little bit anxious, and maybe it's really hard to sit for a while and be
Mm,
creative. So actually, to be honest, water is the best thing, So I
yeah.
try to put in, 6 to 8 cups of water a day, or bottles, I should say, which
Wow.
is quite a bit, but um, that's actually much better for performance. Yeah, yeah. So
Very,
anyway, yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I was reading something recently and it said like the average person drinks two, maybe 3 cups, or not even bottles, like those,
yeah,
not
yeah.
even the 60 ounce
Guilt of that.
bottles. So
Yeah,
it's,
sure.
yeah. And, if it's, I think a lot of people are walking around dehydrated, and that, negatively affects us in many ways. But anyway, getting back to the creativity part of it though, is, if you're well hydrated, you can probably go for a lot longer, and, you feel better too. So,
Very true. Very true. Thank you for that wise advice and wisdom there.
sure.
Thank you. So, actually, diving into today's topic, right? So, do hard things first. How do we do hard things first? And why should we anyway? So,
Mm.
my first question would be, what motivated you to explore the concept of doing hard things first? And what inspired you to write a book on this topic? So I can see you have
Hmm.
that topic.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's actually started because of my internal struggle with procrastination. And whenever we're procrastinating on doing something, it's
Yeah.
because it's a hard thing that we probably don't want to do, but it needs to be done in most cases, right? So, well, it either needs to be done by us or it needs to be done by somebody else. But regardless, it's something that needs to be tackled. So here's the thing: is that and this isn't about like working 18 hours a day or just doing like doing any something really dangerous just because it's a challenging task. That's maybe something different. But I'll give you an example of a hard thing to do. So let's see, working out, for example. All right. So, I go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, probably. I'd like to go more, but going to the gym is one of those things where, like, we'll just say working out in general. I mean, some people might do yoga, could be anything. So let's just say physical exercise.
Mhm.
We all know that it makes you feel great, especially after you finish working out.
Yeah.
But getting to the gym, like, even though I've been going for, decades, I
Mhm.
still will, like, driving to the gym or biking to the gym. I'm
Mhm.
still trying to talk myself out of going through the workout because, it's going to be a little bit painful and hard and all these things. But thing that you have to focus on is how you're going to feel and visualize that. How are you going to feel after you do that? And so, any hard thing that you're putting off, you're
Mhm.
probably putting it off because it's uncomfortable. So there's going to be discomfort involved.
Yeah.
And, the thing is, like, with anything that is, we'll say, like, I don't know, painful or discomforting, we want to avoid it. I mean, that's just in our nature, right? So, if we see a lion, we run away, obviously, right? So our survival instinct kicks in when we're we got something in front of us that's it could be hard work. I mean, it could be a report you need to fill out. It could be, yes, like I said, exercising, or for me, it was like filling out forms, or could be paying a bill, like whatever it may be.
Mhm.
Everybody's got these hard things that if you look around, you're probably avoiding at least one or two things. Like there's something in, it could be like, here's a really good example though.
Mhm.
And this is something that I struggled with for a long time, still do at times, is clutter in the room or clutter in your house, right? So clutter is one of those things that if you have enough space, you can just avoid it for a while because, maybe you've got four corners in your room. And if your room is big enough, you can just let stuff pile up there and, you don't have to deal with it. But
Yeah.
eventually the clutter just starts piling up more and more and more until you can't avoid it anymore.
Yeah.
And, the hard thing to do actually is to tackle that clutter and get rid of it. But here's the key, and this is maybe leading into a little bit more of the strategy, is that what I one thing that I do to handle the hard things is to just take it in bite-sized chunks, just like small steps, right?
Right. Mm.
Um, give an example. So the clutter in the room, well, when I look at it, I feel very overwhelmed, right? And this can be with any of those examples, right? Anything that you're pushing off or not doing, you probably feel some kind of anxiety or overwhelm because it's in your face and you need to tackle this thing and get it done
Yeah.
because somebody might be waiting on you to do it. And the other reason is if you do this thing, you're actually going to feel a lot better. And that's the thing, like when it comes down to the emotions, like the reason we don't do it in the first place
Mhm.
is because we start to overthink it. And, when we start to lean into our feelings, it's like, well, I don't feel like doing it. Right. Well, imagine how you're going to feel after you've got it done. And
Yeah.
then, you are going to feel more confident. You're going to feel, like you've just accomplished something, right? So accomplishment is big. You're going to feel like you've made progress on something.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So all that stuff that's accumulating in your room, the clutter.
Yeah.
I had a room like that actually, was just filled with stuff. So what I did is I made a promise to myself that every day I was just going to move one thing in that room. Like I was going to take one thing in that room, and I had the way that I decided to get
Yeah.
rid of it is like either I'm going to sell it because probably don't need it, and or
Mhm.
the second thing is I was going to throw it away, right, or recycle it, I should say, right.
Mhm.
The thing is that I was not just going to throw it in a closet if I didn't need it. I wanted to get rid of pretty much everything in this room. So that was it. It's like either I was going to sell it or I was going to get rid of it. Either way, it was leaving the house, right? So that was it. Every day I just took one thing out of that room. Took about 30 to 45 days, but most of the room was like it was, I could see the floor again, right? And again, I just did this by just taking one thing every day. And I still follow this principle, by the way, because clutter is like one of those things where, and by the way, this can be clutter on in your computer, on your desktop, can be clutter in your house. It can be clutter in your mind, right? Maybe your mind is a little harder to clean, but when something is in your physical space every day and it's in the way,
Mhm.
uh, it actually, your confidence is going to be at an all-time low. It's just going to every day every time you look at it, you're going to feel worse about yourself. Oh, there it is again. I still haven't done anything about that.
Mhm.
Right. So that's actually one solid reason why doing hard things is so important, is because yeah, it's going to make you feel emotionally like way more confident. You're going to feel like you're making progress.
Mhm.
And those two things there, like once you do that, you're
Yeah.
actually proving to yourself that
Mhm.
you're not worthless. You can actually do this work.
Yeah.
And, you're, and this is the other thing too. A lot of people, myself included, I did this for many years, label themselves as procrastinators, right? So that's one thing that you want to take care of right away is that you are not a procrastinator. If you label yourself as anything,
Yeah.
you will start to, you will form the identity of that thing, right?
It's very
So that was what I did for years. I was like, oh, I'm a procrastinator, therefore I put these things off. It's what I do, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I did a switch and I started calling myself an action taker. I'm an action taker, and that's why I'm doing this thing. And
Mhm.
it's just it sounds like a very simple process, but you'd be surprised once you start to switch things around that way. Now
Yeah.
suddenly you're rewiring your mindset, right?
Mhm.
You're rewiring your brain to, you're also rewiring your subconscious to believe that, well, you're an action taker. So it actually doesn't make sense if you're putting something off, right? Because that's not what I do.
Yeah.
So you've got to flip the language, and
Mhm.
start, using it as your favorite weapon. So,
That's very true. Oh my God, that is so true. So, at the end of the day, it starts with our mindset, first of all. And as you
mm,
say, it dives into our subconscious, and we don't know we're doing these things, and we keep doing them. And then labeling ourselves as something. Oh my
mm,
God, yes, that's something I've never thought about when you label yourself. Because a lot of people label themselves actually. They say, oh, I'm too slow at this, so I can't get it done now.
mhm, mhm.
Or I don't like doing this, so I can't do it now. I do it later. I'll do the ones I like first. So yeah, wow. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Because for me, I thought doing the easier one
Hmm.
first because it's easier, then
Hmm.
you're able to get through to the other the
Hmm. Hmm.
ones. But you
Yeah.
flipped it around though. So yeah, I
Yeah. Well, I mean, the easy things are okay. I mean, of course, there's lots of, I don't know if anything is easy. I mean, I guess watching TV is easy. But that's also, we could also call that the path of least resistance, right? So here's the thing is like, if you want to watch your favorite Netflix show, which is fine,
yeah.
why not do the hard thing first and then reward yourself with, watching the show? I mean, that's what I do. And sometimes I find myself just, doing that first and then but in my mind I'm like, oh yeah, but I'm supposed to be working on this other thing and now I'm here watching TV, so I start to feel a little bit guilty about that. But you can sweep that under the carpet very very easily. So yeah, but But the thing is, if you do the hard thing first,
Yeah.
then everything else after that is actually easy. That's why they are easy things. And I don't mean like watching TV, but just other things that you're doing throughout your day. You know, like if you do something, and it just has to be one thing a day. So here's what I actually do, or this is what I did when I started to build this process.
Hmm.
Is um, I made a list of everything that I was putting off, and I just made a list of it. I had like, I don't know, like there's more than 100 things. And I started off with some of the very basic, like the most obvious things was like clutter in all my rooms and stuff like that. The things that were like, I knew had to be done,
Yeah.
forms I hadn't filled out. And, like you name it, like there was just a lot of things on this list. And then what I did is I would just every day choose one thing on this list. Now, some things were harder than others. So what you can also do is like, because some of these things might have been projects, right? So I have lots of projects, and none of the projects are easy, but the projects are also things that you can't do in 5 minutes or even like a week, right? So I would
Wow.
label some of these as, like what's the priority? And then also, what can I do in 5 minutes or less? Because what you want to do is start to rack up some wins for yourself in the short, like the easy wins, or I guess that you can do in 5 minutes or less. Just start working on those. They may not be the hardest things on the list, but at least there are things that you've identified as something that is it's an open loop. It hasn't been finished yet. So if you can do something in 5 minutes less, or it might be 5 or 10 minutes, however long it takes you, but just make sure that it's something that you can get that quick win.
Yeah.
And then for something else that's like a bigger project,
Yeah.
you probably want to break that down into smaller tasks. So what I did for the projects that I was, not working on,
Yeah.
and the reason I wasn't working on them is because I didn't have clarity on what I needed to do. I would
Okay.
just make a list for that project, and then I would look at, all the little things on there, and that's really what it is. It's just, showing up every day and working on one or two or maybe three things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. I mean, you've nailed it there. There are some tasks that we want to do, and they're just easy to finish up. 5 minutes,
Mm.
less than 5 minutes, and that's a win for the day.
Hmm.
So, can you then explain the psychological benefits of prioritizing difficult tasks over the easier ones?
Yeah, the psychological benefits. Well, maybe I mentioned it, but I think, well, first of all, you're going to feel highly motivated to actually do more work. Like you're going to do more of these things. They're not going to be as scary, actually, right? Because that's why we put these things off in the first place, is we're afraid of failing at it, or we're afraid that we're not going to do it correctly or perfectly or anything like that.
Or something
Um,
just takes too long to finish. You look
yeah,
at
and
it and you just think it's going to take hours, and you just leave
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just share a quick story actually. I'm just thinking of one of the hardest things for me, and I did this. So taxes. Let's talk about taxes.
Right.
Um, when I left my full-time job, and by the way, so when you work in a company, they usually do the taxes for you. All I had to do was like at the end of the year, fill out a form and sign my name to it.
Yeah.
Even that was hard, and that took me like 10 minutes. Right. So when I left the corporation, I started working on my own as an author and entrepreneur. Wow, you have to do your own taxes. Nobody's coming over to your house to do it for you unless you hire an accountant, which I didn't have at the time for like the first 3 years. Had a bookkeeper, but they weren't going to do the work for you. So what I did for the first few years is, and I've been doing this for about, like 5 years or so.
Yeah.
I would leave everything up to the last moment, like printing out all my receipts. And I had all my receipts in a box and they weren't organized. And, it was like here, our tax season is in March, when we have to file in March. And it would
Mm.
be the end of February. And, we have to submit our taxes by March 15th, the
Yeah.
end of February. And I still hadn't done anything for the year of organizing taxes. And the thing is, I had a year to do it.
Right.
And the promise I made to myself is that at the end of every month, I'm
Yeah.
going to take an hour at the end of the month on the last day of the month, and I was going to do all my like taxes for that month. And at the end of every month, I procrastinated. I was like, no, I'll just put it off until tomorrow or next week. And the next thing I know, April goes by and it's May and June. And before you know it, it's the end of the year. And I'm like, now I've got all this stuff. And so what I had to do
Yeah.
3 or 4 years in a row is really just grind really hard for 2 weeks. Now, some people work really well that way.
You're
I
right.
wouldn't recommend it. I mean, because first of all, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You could, which your accountant may or may not catch.
Yeah.
Uh, you're actually going to end up like, and this is just one example, but you may end up losing money because you've lost a lot of receipts because you weren't tracking them to begin with. So anyway, this whole thing just it started getting worse every year because and this is probably a good thing is because I started making a little bit more money every year. So, and putting out more products, right? But anyway, the point is like that's one of those situations where I kept putting it off every year until one year finally I got really caught up and I had a issue with not with the tax department. We always filed on time, but
Right.
I just had a lot of stress, like mentally and physically, because I was trying to do everything, cram it all in. It's like, when you try to cram a test in at the last minute, right?
Yeah.
You never do as well if you're studying for it for like, a few weeks ahead of times.
Mhm, mhm.
But the psychological impact of that though was very negative. So, and that's what's going to happen is first of all, you're going to put yourself through a lot of stress, I think, especially if there's a deadline. Now, tax is a little bit more severe because we do have a deadline. You can't be late with it. They don't like that. You'll get fined,
Yeah.
But when we take something, let's just, like when it comes to, I don't know, decluttering your room again. Well,
Mhm.
if you're not accountable to that and nobody's really holding you accountable to that, you can just let it pile up and pile up and pile up.
Thing.
But again, the psychological impact of that is like, first of all, you're not going to trust yourself because you've been lying to yourself this whole time that you're going to do it and you don't do it. So my message to everybody is just show up for yourself, do
Right.
that hard thing, whatever it may be, but be clear on what the hard things are. Make a list of them. You can go through and you can prioritize the list. You don't have to prioritize it from like hardest to easiest you can, but I
Yeah.
would just pick one thing on there that you can do quickly. And, this may be the easiest thing on on your list of hard things to do, but just pick something. And then, eventually like you can start to work on, you're going to be climbing the ladder of these things and like taking them off your list. That's just going to feel great. I mean, that's,
Yes.
the best way to put it.
That's true. That's true. A lot of people procrastinate anyway, including myself, and I'm
Mm.
trying to work on it. What strategies do you recommend for overcoming this? I would say addiction because it
Mm.
is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting you say that. It actually, I never thought about it that way, but actually, when you think about it, it's I think that's why addictions are so hard to beat because overcoming an addiction is extremely difficult. You have to, depending on the addiction, you might have to go into recovery and talk to people about it, and you have to get real with your addiction. Well, procrastination was actually the same thing in the way that I had to deal with it because first of all, you have to recognize that this is the behavior you're doing.
Yes.
You also have to accept the fact that maybe you're powerless over it, and the only way to get over it is to admit that this is a problem, right? So yeah, like an addiction, you have to admit that it's a problem, and then you can actually move forward with it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're right. Like I mean, we'll always, like everybody puts something off to some degree, and that's fine. And this is actually there's probably the difference between your average procrastinator, which is probably most of us.
Mhm.
And then you have the chronic procrastination, which for me, that was more on the level of where I would put things off that actually would have like such a negative effect on some part of my life that it was almost irreversible sometimes. And that's when you get yourself into trouble. Like the taxes I didn't get into trouble for that, but I could have very easily.
Yeah.
Um, but I did have another situation where there was like one credit card bill that I didn't pay for 3 months because they couldn't take the money into my bank and they kept sending me letters and I just kept going, oh, I'll do it later. And eventually they just like canceled all my credit. So, so things like that can happen. But
Yeah.
again, if I'd taken an hour to drive across town to the bank and pay the bill, it would have been handled, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh
But
my.
sorry, getting back to your question though, I already mentioned though, like, yeah, like be clear on what it is that you like go around your house, go on your computer, wherever it is that you are feeling anxiety or overwhelm, the
Yeah.
chances are there's something there that is unfinished and you know it, like your subconscious mind knows it, like,
Mhm.
so make a list of those things and then just start working on them. Like break those tasks down into, 5-minute tasks, 2-minute tasks. Could
Mhm.
be making a phone call. I would put off phone calls all the time to, I don't know, whoever was calling me. It could have been the bank calling me, or usually someone's calling me every day for business. And
Yeah.
I'll look at the phone, and even now I'll see it ringing. I'm going, well, do I really want to talk to them now, or should I talk to them later? And you
It's,
know, and so I still it still happens, right? But the thing is like after making the phone call and having that 5 minute conversation, because they probably needed something in order for them to, help you with your business, you
mhm.
realize, oh, that wasn't actually so bad after all. So what was I afraid of?
Oh my God. Oh my God. That is true. But how can we develop resilience? A mindset that is needed to embrace to embrace the discomfort,
Hmm.
that to embrace tackling the hard things first. How can we
Mhm.
embrace it? How can we do it?
Yeah, so the first thing is you want to adopt a growth mindset, right? So the growth mindset is, so the fixed mindset is saying, no, I'm a procrastinator. I'm not doing these things and da da da. But the growth mindset is saying, I want to do these things. And this is actually one of the keys to why we want to lean harder into the doing the hard things first,
Yeah,
is because it's the only way you can grow, right? So if you're taking the path of least resistance and doing all the same things you've always done, and you're going to get the same result, you're not going to grow from that. But you will grow from doing the hard things. Now, this could be, like again, working out at the gym, and maybe you've been going there for years, and you haven't been getting any results lately, because this happens to everybody. You hit a peak, and then eventually, like, you stop going because you just hit that peak and you're not growing. So you got to switch up your routine. And what I would recommend is in the morning. Actually, no, let me just go back. In the evening before you go to bed, look at your list of hard things to do, and just on a little sticky note,
mhm,
put three things on that sticky note, and then put that on your desk. And so for me, like, I'm always working on my computer. So that's what I do. I've got my sticky note here of three things I'm going to get done today. And hey, if I can get those done in the first hour or hour and a half or 2 hours of my day,
yeah,
the thing is like you're going to be bringing energy into the day, instead of the flip side of that is putting it off and putting it off,
yeah,
which is draining your energy, because now you're thinking about it all day,
yeah,
right? And at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I didn't do it again. So now you've just disappointed yourself. So that's the thing, is like you want to build that energy first thing in the morning. And what a better way to do it than just to, hey, if working out something that's hard for you, or doing yoga or whatever it is,
yeah,
like what I do is actually I put my workout stuff next to my bed. So when I get up, it's right there. And I do like 15 minutes of it. And I might work out again later on in the day. But the hardest thing to do is really like to start moving your body around, But once you start doing that, you feel great. So,
yeah.
um, so anyway, getting out of your comfort zone, right? Just,
Compass.
pick one thing for that, and, developing a growth mindset, do some reading first thing in the morning, and then just start building energy into the day.
Great. Do some reading in the morning. Wow. Okay, great. Thank you. Do some reading in the morning. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before we go, I know you've written so many books, over
Mhm.
30 in your lifetime.
It's been a few, yes. Yeah.
Where can we purchase them if we want to?
Sure. So you can, of course, you can go to Amazon. If you plug in Scott Allan books or author, I'm sure they will probably pop up like popcorn, maybe. I don't know. But if you go to scottallanpublishing.com, that's one of our websites there. You can find information about the books and other things there. And then scottallanbooks.com is where we have the Shopify store, where we're selling everything directly. So we have two websites, and of course, you can always go to Google and just plug in Scott Allan author. I'm sure that you can probably find interviews on there that I've done, as well as books. And we're working on the course platform, so we'll have courses available in a few months.
Okay, great. Thank
So
you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Are all the books behind you yours?
they are, yes. That's one of the series. That's the Pathways to Mastery series, and all the books are, empower your habits and focus and confidence and fear. So each there's 12 books in the series, and we have book number 12 coming out at the end of this month called Empower Your Wealth.
Mm,
So check it out if you have a chance.
thank you. Thank you so much for coming on our show today, Scott.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been so much pleasure having you on our show and sharing everything you shared with us today, especially for me. So I'm going to have to start doing the hard things first. So I'll let you know how I get on anyway.
All right, please do.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank
Good
you.
luck, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Subscribe if you haven't done so. Like, follow, comment. Until next time. Goodbye.